Okay.
For just joining, feel free to introduce yourself to the chat function. I am ready, Carol. So with that, hello all. On behalf of the VTA and Minority Business Consortium and the Silicon Valley Transit Consultants, I welcome you to this month's BSV2 Mentor Protege Workshop. I'm Raul Labrin. I'm a Vice President with WSP and SVTC's Mentor Protege Plan Lead. I'm joined today by representatives from the Minority Business Consortium, Reginald Swilley and Carol Bean. Today's presentation is the third workshop which covers the topic of how to grow your business. We have Robert Luster here, and I'll get more into that in a minute. Note that today's presentation is being recorded and will be made available after the presentation via a link, which we will give. Carol can do that in the chat, and it'll also be shown on our last slide. We won't take the time to do formal introductions before we get going. So as I mentioned earlier, please introduce yourself through the chat function and let people know who you are and what company you're representing. We will have a Q&A session at the end. Please use the Q&A prompt through Zoom to post questions, and I'll field those. We'll also have an opportunity to ask questions live if you want to do that as well during that Q&A session. Now I'd like to turn it over to Reginald Swilley from Minority Business Consortium to say a few words before we get going. Reggie.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So I am Reginald Swilley, owner of Minority Business Consortium with Walter Wilson, and Carol Bean is our jack of all trades. She's working the schedules and actually working this Mentor Protege Zoom. We have been hired to do for the SBE DBE aspect, inclusion aspect of this whole BART phase to have Robert Luster, who is instrumental in putting together this whole Mentor Protege program. VTA in this project, they wanted to make sure that the full community had access to all the wisdom and that businesses would actually be able to increase their capacity and understanding of how to work in these environments. And I'm Robert Luster, and make sure that you leave your name and phone number. We'll have all of these three and more.
We're losing Reggie. Sorry about that. I think you froze up, Reggie. That's okay. I'll take the time now. And thank you, Reggie. I'll take the time now to do an introduction for our esteemed presenter. Today we have Robert Luster, who's the president of Luster National Incorporated. Robert has 31 years of program management experience and has worked extensively over the years with public agencies like the VTA to assist in the design and implementation of small business capacity build programs. His firm is a nationwide program management firm that specializes in quality, risk, budget, schedule, and small business consulting services. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Robert to get us going. Thanks, Robert.
All right, Raul. Thank you, Reginald and Carol. Again, my name is Robert Luster. I'm the president and owner of Luster National Inc. I have had the privilege of being in business now for 31 years. And it's been a very interesting ride. We've had some good ups and some not so good downs, but overall, it's been very worthwhile. And I am just excited to be able to share my story with you this afternoon and hopefully give you, some information that can help you either as a business owner or as someone working in our industry, some tools and bits of information that will allow you to be more successful in taking the contract that you have right now working on the VTA work to expand that outside of the VTA to other work in other geographic areas or in other business sectors. How I got my start is kind of an interesting story. After graduating from the military academy at West Point in New York, I served about 6 years on active duty. And one of my final duty stations, I was working back at West Point on staff and faculty, and was able to work with the New York District Corps of Engineers as an owner, where then that Corps of Engineer office was presenting to me the contractor selection process and the architect engineer selection process, and exposed me to project management. And from that, I worked for another company out of Raleigh, North Carolina that had an office in Oakland, California. Worked there for about a year and then started my own business doing project and construction management. I didn't have a whole lot to start with. In fact, I started my business using some credit cards, just getting my business launched from that perspective. So it didn't take much, but at the time, it just took a lot of sweat and equity. But the opportunity to own your own business, and I'd like to take a deliberate pause here. Carol's going to send out a poll. I'd like to know how many of you that are on the presentation this afternoon are business owners. So hopefully you can respond to that, and then I'll share what the results were. My presentation has been geared toward business owners, but it has application to everybody who is here. I think the information you'll find quite interesting. I also wanted to say that the first contract that Luster National ever won when I started the business back in January of 1990 was actually a VTA contract. It was the Guadalupe Light Rail segment for the VTA. And what happened was that there was a firm, it was called O'Brien Kreitzberg, which is now part of AECOM. And they were the construction managers overseeing that work. And I met with the project manager on a Monday morning around 10 o'clock. And he asked if I could present somebody that could do change order reviews. And I was able to present to him the next day somebody that met the qualifications, and thus Luster had its first contract. And so it's neat that here I am now presenting to you about work at the VTA. So it's come full circle. I'm just trying to see now where the...
Yeah, we have 29 owners and 15 non-owners.
Okay, great. Well, good. So the majority of you are business owners, which is perfect because that's what I wanted to focus on. Thank you, Carol, for giving me that information.
And Robert, I don't know if you got the note, but we're if you could change your view to the presentation view, we're seeing your other view on Zoom.
Okay, that I'm not.
If it's gonna slow you down, don't worry about it. But.
Okay. Can you see the slide now about?
Yeah, we're just seeing 2 slides instead of 1. So
right.
if you could get it to the display setting that's 1, that would be great.
Okay. Well, don't think I'm going to ever get that off. Let me continue. So the first thing I want to emphasize is about having a business plan. And one of the key things as a business owner, since there's 29 of you, and I noticed that my good friend Walter Allen is there. So I wanted to do a shout out to you because I noticed that you did sign in on the on the chat. So Walter certainly going to know much of what I'm sharing because he certainly is a very successful business owner as the owner of Acumen. But the things I'm going to share is to look at things from a higher perspective, not just as a business owner, but as an individual who's trying to figure out what am I going to do for myself and for my family. And when you're talking about creating wealth, you have to think about creating wealth for yourself before you think about creating wealth and successful business practices for your business. And so that all comes down to what is your number? And what do I mean by that? Your number is at the point where your passive income is greater than your expenses that you have in your life. And when you're able to have more passive income beyond what your expenses are, that's when you don't have to come to work anymore and you have options. And so all of us, whether we're a business owner or not, we should be focusing on knowing what that number is. Hopefully, most of us every year, we go to the doctors to get an annual physical just to make sure everything's okay. Same thing applies to doing an annual financial physical for you as an individual. And this is something that what I do is every year I get with my outside accountant, with my outside lawyer, and my financial planner. And we sit down to do any type of recalibration that's required in what my number is and what is it that I'm looking to do. There might be some changes. I know that here in the next 5 or 6 years, I've got 2 weddings I'll be planning for my 2 daughters that are both in their 20s now. Because of that. But knowing what your number is critical, in my opinion, in being able to then prepare for your businesses to be successful. Once I've done that, then I'm going to go ahead and make my company business plan. And hopefully you can, so I just put this up. This is something that we put together every year. It's a big binder with a lot of information, and it allows my company leadership to say, this is what we're going to do in the next fiscal year, be it calendar year or fiscal year. That's a decision that you guys make. And once that plan is drafted, then I'm going to have my leadership, internal leadership, look at it, and we will sit down for 2 or 3 days and we'll comment on it. Once that's done, I'll have my outside support staff. That's my banker, my outside accountant, my legal, and my financial planner. All of them also have a chance to review it, because the idea is, let's have all of the smart people that you're working with to make those types of adjustments on it, so that when you do begin to implement your plan has had an opportunity to have some of the best minds that you're working with to have a chance to comment on it. You then work the plan, and now you're starting to implement it. And then what I do is I set up a first quarter review. It's kind of a cursory review just to see how things are happening. And like right now, we're in June, we're now doing any of the adjustments that we needed to make sure that the plan is going to be successful throughout the balance of this year, and it's going to be able to help Luster National in preparation for 2022. Once I've done that, let me change the slide here. Some things you want to consider, and before I get to the functional subject matter experts, as business owners, for the 29 of you that are business owners, are you a C Corp? Are you an S Corp? Again, you get with your outside accountant to see which one makes best sense. Luster National is an S Corp. We made that decision so that we can mitigate the double taxation. Do you have business owners? Business partners? Or are you 100% owner? And that's something else you need to think of. Luster National has been owned 100% by me up until last month, where I sold 49% of my company to my two daughters. And this is part of my exit strategy is a family succession plan. And so as business owners, your exit strategy is going to be to either be acquired, you'll have a succession plan, which I'm doing, or it could be where you're going to work until you drop dead. But I think those are the only three options you have as a business owner. But somewhere you're going to be coming up with, what am I going to do? Because at some point this can't keep going on and on. But I encourage all of you who are business owners to please do have a plan and then work it. And so I think the one thing I wanted to emphasize from this portion of the presentation was that before you jump into developing your annual business plan, please take the time to recalibrate what your number is. Again, so you've got sufficient amount of passive income to exceed your expenses, and that you developed your exit strategy. That will help drive your business plan. That's what I do. So when I meet with my accountant and my lawyer and my financial planner, when I look at what I need to do, that helps me direct how my business plan will be developed. So it helps me accomplish my exit strategy. The other area that I have found that's so important is having to surround yourself with the best and the brightest. I don't have all the answers as an owner. I look at myself as the conductor of an orchestra. And as a conductor of an orchestra, some of the folks that I work with on my team, they're working at an optimal level. Some of the folks require additional training. Some just need fine tuning. You as the owner of the business, or if you're a project manager or an office manager, you've got people that are looking to you to provide them with the requisite leadership and the tools and systems that they need to be successful. And this is what, as a business owner or a leader in your company, you want to be providing so that your company is able to sustain a level of success that you state in your annual business plan. And that means, looking on this slide about staffing for success, having your functional subject matter experts. Are you an engineering firm, an electrical engineering firm? Are you a construction management firm, community engagement firm? Whatever area of expertise that you're focused on, you want to make sure that you've got the best and the brightest. Where I talk about the back office, I'm talking about your HR folks, your accounting folks, maybe your sales and proposal staff. You may have 5 people or 1 person doing that, depending upon the size of your firm. Whatever the size is, that back office staff is critical to the success of your business. And if you're not a business owner, that back office is still critical to you, because so often, especially on the HR and the accounting side, those folks are touching everybody in the organization. And so you want to make sure that their ability to have that type of interaction, they're going to know what's going on with some of your folks who might be out on PTO because they're in the hospital, or somebody's a family member's not doing well. All of this type of information is critical to you as a leader or someone managing a section of the company, to ensure that that type of information is then put back into what adjustments for the day, for the week, or for the month need to be made, so that you can mitigate significant swings in how the business is moving forward. As far as for a sales team, some people are sellers, some people are doer sellers. However you're set up, fantastic. The key thing that I have found over 31 years when it comes into a sales team, it's knowing what it is that you want to sell. And then being able to align whatever it is you're selling to your teaming partners, which could be primes that you're a sub-consultant to, or it could be to a client that you're working directly if you've got prime work. But making sure there's a proper alignment between the what you're selling and then what the teaming partner or client wants. And then creating the collateral material and the social media platforms and the website material that again gives you the branding that will allow you to send a consistent message and also a message that's easy to understand. All of us are on overwhelm every day. We have more work than there is time in a day. And so keeping it simple is going to be still the best policy. One of the areas that I've seen some of my business colleagues not do that I emphasize that they should do is this outside support team. I spend a lot of time with my bankers, my accountants, my financial planner, my insurance brokers, even my, we have a national account with Enterprise for the vehicles that we lease. I spend a lot of time with this outside support team for various reasons. One, because the outside support team has a lot of information about what's happening in and outside of our industry. So I'm gleaning intelligence. The other is that so much of what Luster National does depends upon some of the basics that, our insurance certificates, our business lines of credits with our banks, our contract review from a legal perspective. And so the more that my outside support team is made part of who Luster is, and the more they have a greater familiarity with who I am and what the company is all about, they're that much more able to support us when there is a potential crisis. And then for you as the owner, for those 29, again, as that conductor, the key thing there is how much of your time are you spending in a tactical mode versus a strategic mode? There have been times where I've been 100% tactical because we've got 4 or 5 fires we're trying to put out all at one time. I will tell you that the more time you can spend in a strategic perspective, where you can go up to that 15,000 foot level and look at the big picture, it's going to allow your company to be able to have greater sustained success. If you're not a business owner, if you have an area in a company that you're responsible for, same thing applies. If you're able to increase the amount of time you're looking at things from a strategic perspective, it's going to give you the opportunity to look at things in a different light. And maybe that just means, stepping away from the computer, take a walk around the block, clear your head, do 15 push-ups, jump on the bicycle, something, whatever it is, to create some separation from being in the weeds so that you can come back with a different point of view, looking at it through a different set of lenses. Whatever catchphrase you want to utilize as a business owner or as a leader in your company, I highly recommend that you find a way to have some strategic time in your daily activities. So, in trying to now bring this all down to what's happening on the BART phase 2 with the VTA and the SVTC joint venture, how do you now take what you have here on the VTA contract and now try to leverage that to springboard it? I want to ask Have any of you heard the following tagline: create, collaborate, and lead? Obviously, I can't see you, so you can't tell me what that is, but I'll tell you. So that happens to be the VTA tagline in the 2017 to 2022 strategic plan. And so I bring that out because if you have not read the VTA strategic plan, you should, since you're working for the VTA. There's a lot of good information in that strategic plan. It outlines what they're all about. The VTA's focus is about creating the opportunity to move people, be it by bus, BT, or by rail, so they can get to work. So that's what they're focused on. It's important that you understand what the client is all about, so that when you're providing services, you have that situational awareness. And that's very important. That's one of my last bullets. The other thing I find is, what's your value add? If you're either trying to go directly to the VTA or the BART, or if you're going to a larger firm as a subconsultant, what is it that you're bringing to the table? Some functional subject matter expertise? Is it because the VTA or the large firm is just trying to check a box to say, hey, yeah, I've got a minority-owned firm, I've got a veteran-owned firm? Because that's not enough, okay? It's not enough. There are so many firms that are in that pool. You want to take the extra steps to differentiate yourself from the other firms in that pool, so that the client and or the teaming partner are going to say, I want to use Acumen, okay? Because what Walter Allen is doing is fantastic. And so that takes a little more energy and effort on everybody's part. And that's knowing who your client is, knowing who your teaming partner is. How many of you have met Takis Alpius or even know who he is? Okay. If you haven't, you want to find a way now that, COVID, we're starting to get behind that. We can start doing more face-to-face. Find out where Takis is. He might be speaking somewhere, and go to that place, introduce yourself to him. Since he's the one that's leading this, of the whole BART Phase 2 program. Have you met, or do you know who Tony Purdom or Bob Stromstead are? They're the two principals for the SVTC joint venture. You want to make sure that they know you. They're the ones that are responsible for the making sure that the four firms that have come together, WSP, HNTB, PGH Wong, and Mott McDonald, are all working in unison to deliver the professional services that BART and VTA are wanting. And so the more that they know you, the better apt you're going to have an understanding of what it is that they want, so that when you go back and talk to your leadership and your team, you can make those course adjustments in your functional areas and in your presentation, so that it better aligns with what the joint venture is looking for. The other is that once you've got a good feel and you've met people from the joint venture, then you start asking, I'd like to meet other representatives from your firms that are working in San Jose or working in Oakland, San Francisco, working in Los Angeles, all depending upon what your geographic outreach is, so that you can then use the work you're doing at the VTA to springboard to other work that other members of the SVTC joint venture are working. I'll give you a quick story, because I know we've got just about a minute and a half here on the formal presentation. So Bob Stromstead used to work for DeLue Cather way back in the late 80s in the city of San Jose. And I met him down there back then. And one of the things that he and I had in common was I went to West Point and he went to the Coast Guard Academy. And because of that relationship, that was something that we had in common. So you find, some common threads of either school, it could be where you go to church, it could be, you guys are both active in a philanthropic entity. You find ways to connect to your teaming partners, to your clients, to again, break the barriers down that may exist, and then start that relationship so it builds over time. And again, this is all part of what I call the situational awareness quotient. And this is where, the more time you can be strategic, you can be looking at this bigger picture. So this last slide is really to kind of bring it all together of how do you as a business owner create your own roadmap to financial independence. You see, I've got this kind of a platform here where at the base, you've got continuous process improvement. Whatever it is you do, you should always embed into your solution lessons learned, best practice. You could do it every quarter, every 6 months, definitely on an annual basis for your business and also for your knowing what your personal number is. That's where I talk about the annual checkups. Definitely make sure that there's that periodic and frequent review to make sure that you're staying on point, and have an exit strategy, and making sure that is it going to be through acquisition, succession plan? That's the exit strategy I've selected, or again, you're just going to work yourself to death. And always trying to continue to pursue additional forms of education, and being able to recruit people so you keep replenishing your stable of folks working for you. And of course, all of us have been reading some of the things that are going on across the United States right now about home ownership, about investments, about tremendous disparities that exist right now in the wealth in the United States. And so all of us, whether you're a business owner or not that's on here, you want to be able to create some of those basic cornerstones of creating wealth, which will include home ownership, which could include doing things in the stock market, which could include your savings and CDs, other businesses. But for me, and I think for many of us, it's no matter what approach you're using, have a plan, work the plan, and then review it. And so that concludes the formal portion of this presentation. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Raul.
Great, Robert, thanks so much. Just a great perspective from a business owner, small to now larger firm. So appreciate that. To our guests, feel free to enter any questions in the Q&A. I've got one or two here, and or just raise your hand. Carol can allow you to ask a formal question. But let me start with the question that was raised by Josephine. Robert, she was just asking in general the size of your company, but I'll add to that. Can you talk a little bit about the progression of the size of your company? How many years has it taken to get you to where you are?
So the company right now is 80 people. Actually, the company, so when I started off in 1990, had one person, me. But by, I think it was 2000, we were up to 115 people. And then we made a conscious decision to shift a lot of our work from doing non-federal government work to almost exclusively federal government work across the United States. And so we dipped in our staffing size. And right now, our plan is to get back up to about 115, but no larger. That's a good number for me, for what I want to accomplish as a business owner. I'm not interested. And again, that's another, each person has a strategy. you take, I know that PGH Wong, I know Clifford is I guess the son who's taken over, and that company, they're huge. We worked with them back in the 90s at the San Francisco airport. And so they made a conscious decision to take a different path, a very successful path for them. Each path is it's what it is. What is it that you want to do for your business?
Excellent.
So before you go on, I just, while you were speaking, I was thinking I'd ask a poll question of everyone, identifying the biggest challenges they face as a small business leader today. And business plan, 6 out of 31 said that was a challenge. Adequate staffing was head to head and with marketing, about 15 people each said. Now, I allowed people to do more than one response. So 15 groups said both of those were challenges. And then the largest one was building professional relationships, teaming and networking. And we've heard that a lot. And I know, Robert, you were speaking to the group as if many of them are already working with BART Phase 2, but many of them are not, so some of them are and some of them are not. So that is, that was the kind of like, how do I do that? And you were giving some great ideas. I was thinking as a woman, sometimes it's hard to get into the good old boys club about that we both went to the Naval Academy, not that women don't, but different ways to connect with people professionally and networking. But it's hard to do those cold calls, to call up a company and say, hey, I'm a DBE or an SBE and I do this. It's like, how do you break through just being one of a million?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for sharing that, Carol. I think the key thing there is it takes a lot longer than you think. And so if you're just creating a relationship in the month of June 2021, you may not have, a contract in hand 3 months or 4 months from now. It may take 12 to 18 months ahead before that actually materializes into a contract. I think, coming out of the COVID environment, as human beings, we want to interact face to face. And being able to find out who the leaders are. I'd mentioned Tony Purdom. I'd mentioned Bob Stromstead. Those are some folks that, if I did not know them, I would want to get to know them. And so now it's just, well, how do you get to them? Well, obviously, you've got Raul here, who's part of the joint venture. He's on this call. And, maybe you can find a way where there's an opportunity to set up maybe a follow-on, like MS Teams kind of orientation, where you kind of, you meet the leaders of the joint venture. That's one way. But that'll be kind of a cattle call. To do a one-on-one is find out, because most of the folks go to professional events. They'll go to a luncheon or a dinner or a conference somewhere and find where they're going and then go to those. That's what I did. That's how I did my initial. In fact, way back when CMAA had just started and I had no money, I wouldn't even sign up for the CMAA event. What I would do is I'd go to the hotel where the conference was, and I would just hang out in the bar in the lobby area, and I was able to catch most of the people I needed to meet. I didn't even have to pay for the conference because, again, I didn't have any money. And so another technique that I use is I'll find out who the person's assistant is and find out and then become friends with the assistant. Usually I would go into the office, and find out who he or she is and develop that relationship where then the assistant perhaps slipped me in for a meeting, a one-on-one meeting, or definitely was able to say, Bob Stromstead is going to a luncheon, a CMAA luncheon next month. And so good, well, I'm going to go too. And then all of a sudden you just have to go up and you start talking.
I think that's so key. I mean, people get inundated with a lot of requests, and standing out is important. And I think doing research, I mean, there's so much on the internet. You can find out where people went to school. You can find out where they give, what charities they're interested in. There's a variety of, there's professional organizations, but I think also knowing that it takes time to build those relationships is really important.
Absolutely, Carol.
Okay, thank you, folks. I'm getting a few more questions, and I'll try to consolidate as much as possible. There was Diana just asked a basic marketing question, Robert, and I think you touched on it a little bit about how you get in touch with with some of the primes. But in general, what is your marketing philosophy, and for small business or growing business, what are the things that they should focus on?
Yeah. You need to, based upon how much of your work is where you're acting as a prime and how much of your work are you acting as a sub-consultant. Luster National, it has a 70% approach as a sub-consultant, 30% as a prime. And so we have different strategies for those two different doors. As a sub-consultant, we've identified a certain number of firms that we either have a history working with or we feel comfortable working with, meaning that we feel that we're being respected, that the contract terms are reasonable, the payment cycle is reasonable. And we come up with a checklist of why, and then every year when my leadership gets together for its retreat, we go through that list of firms that we're teaming with, and we say, do we want to continue working with them? So we kind of are very systematic in doing that. But once we have reconfirmed those firms, we keep them manageable. We've got, I think, 7. Then it's a question of doing a deep penetration into the geographic areas that you're operating, so that you stay on the tip of their tongue. Because I will tell you that how many times I have heard when I spoke to somebody from a firm, oh, I wish you had, you and I had this meeting, 4 months ago, because we just put together the proposal and we won the job. But I didn't think of Luster, and so and that's where today, as Carol mentioned, there's so many new tools that are available to us with social platforms, with CRMs that we can use to better push information about your firm to the teaming partners or to the clients that you want, so that you remain relevant and you remain current in the minds of the folks you're reaching out to. Some of the other things that Luster does is, again, we're always trying to reinvent ourselves. Last year, we created something called Q-Checks, which is a platform, a fully automated platform to review and approval documents on a SharePoint platform. Last month, we got our notice that we're ISO 9001-2015 certified, because one of our core areas is in quality and risk. And so having that certification is a very big deal, and it helps Luster differentiate itself. So those types of suggestions is what I would share.
Outstanding. There's a question, an anonymous question, and this is geared more towards myself and NBC. And I'll ask the question, but I'll defer it till the end. The question is, what does SVTC and VTA see as best practices? So NBC, if you could think about that question a little bit, I'll do the same, but I want to stay on Robert here for a second. Sheila asks, 3 top tips to a good business plan.
A good outline. Number 2 would be that you create the plan so that it's very holistic, looking at all the different aspects of your organization. And number 3, but most important, that you define in no more than a half page what is your strategic objective and supporting goals that that business plan needs to assimilate to.
Outstanding.
So there was a question, Raul, about connecting with the joint ventures,
Yeah.
with the 4 joint ventures, and that work. I don't want to say that their teams are full. There are occasional opportunities to join with within those, and those are all professional service oriented jobs. This is the design project management team, but VTA has 4 major contracts for the BART Phase 2 project. One is has just got a short list of firms, and if you email me, I can send you that short list of firms who are being considered for the tunnel and track work contract. It would behoove you, and this is a best practice, is to get on their radar, those 3 firms. Find out how you can get to know them in a variety of different ways, as well as do a cold call and let them know you're a DBE, whatever service you're providing, or an SBE, and let them know that you'd like to be part of their team. You can be part of all 3 teams. You don't have to choose one or the other. One of those teams will be chosen by VTA to do the tunnel and track work. And then under each one of them, they'll have subprimes, and they will be looking for people. So getting that information, and I cannot stress this enough, become a vendor. If you are not a vendor at VTA, it takes like 2 to 3 minutes to register as a vendor. And I will put the link up for you to be able to do that, or email me and I'll send you that information. The second thing is, if you're not certified, in one sense, you can't help these companies meet their DBE goals or their SBE goals. And those are goals that are set because it's a federally funded contract. So you have an advantage if you are certified to be able to get kind of a leg up on being able to receive some of these contracts. That is also available. It is free. If you live in the Santa Clara or South Bay area, VTA can do it, but you don't have to be certified through VTA. There's a lot of other agencies that do that certification, and it's all free. You getting your paperwork together is probably the most time-consuming thing, but once you submit it, it can take up to 90 days for that to get processed. So just be aware that if you're not a DBE or an SBE, there's that process. If you're a minority-owned company or a woman-owned company, then apply for a DBE. You automatically get considered as also a SBE. If you are a DBE and maybe you're a minority-owned company and there's places that have, have minority goals, women-owned goals or minority goals, then your DBE can easily qualify you for that. You don't have to get recertified. And so I don't know, Robert, you're a DBE. Was that a difficult process? Was that an advantage for you to do? Kind of give people some wisdom on that.
Yeah. So we operate in New York, Georgia, Texas, and California. So we've got certifications all across the country. And in most instances, because we do a lot of federally funded infrastructure work, the DBE certification has been very important to us. It does take some energy to fill out all the forms, but again, it's worth it. And so I encourage you to work through that. And if you don't have the internal wherewithal, there are firms and individuals, mostly individuals, that know how to help put all those forms together for you. So there is help that you can find. And one of the places you can go to is the SBA. The SBA office can point you in the right direction if you need some help there.
And now everything is online. So if you start a process of being certified online and you get to the point in they're asking you for, well, I want your financial records for the last 3 years, and you don't have them, you just pause your application, you get your documents together, and then you can come back to it. So it used to be that everything had to be on paper and mailed in. Now you can do it all online and upload things as you go along.
Yeah.
Awesome. I do want to get back to the best practices question. So Reggie, I think Carol touched on a few of those.
Yes.
But I'll turn it to you, and then I'll take a stab as well.
Okay, I think she touched on most of it. What being able to be ahead of the game, the best practices around here is very much what Luster pointed to. He talked about having all your pieces together, knowing what your plans are, making contact with those people that are important. When he talked about knowing the people you're looking for a contract from, about knowing Takas out, I thought that was brilliant. But what I hear around VTA and what NBC actually tried to do is develop relationships. Relationships are key to people knowing exactly who you are and what you do and why you will be important to them. And being on time and being upfront and knowing what your strengths are and recognizing what your weaknesses are and working on them, knowing where they are. And that was actually one of the questions I wanted Robert to respond to. Many times companies that are small businesses and companies trying to get into processes like this have particular weaknesses. And I want to know if you can speak to what you thought your biggest weakness was and how you overcame that.
Sure. Got a great story. It was money and having the capital. And so back in 1992, company was 2 years old. I wasn't bankable, didn't own a house, didn't have any money, had a couple of contracts. And I was factoring my invoices. And what that means was I was basically selling my invoices to a third party so I could keep my cash flow going. And basically it was taking my profit away, but it kept the doors open. And so I desperately needed to get a banking relationship. And so what I did was my office was up in Sacramento. I started a relationship with the branch manager where I was going to go and ask for a line of credit. And I was able to get her to, believe in the company, even though, again, we were not bankable. There was nothing that we were doing that made sense. But I, again, shared a lot of information about what we're doing. Anytime we got a contract, I'd go and say, hey, here's a copy of our contract, just to show that we were moving in the right direction. And eventually she set up a meeting with somebody who came up from San Francisco who had the ability to approve a $125,000 line of credit. And so what I did was I went up to the whiteboard in my office and I wrote down all of the exceptions of why Wells Fargo should not approve this loan. All right, because again, if you look at the criteria, that's exactly why they shouldn't have done it. But then I just added 2 letters to exception on the board, and it said exceptional. And then I talked about the exceptional qualities of Luster National Inc. and what we're doing. And he went like this, and he said, well done. He says, you have your, because again, it caught him off guard. And so, when you need to get the money, you'll find a way to get it. And that's what I do.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Reggie. Thanks.
I also wanted to underscore, I want to make sure I said this. If you are a vendor and you're following a project, you can go in and see everybody else who's following that project. Sometimes, most of the time, they'll say they're a prime or a sub. Some of them won't identify, but that allows you to kind of know who's interested, and you can start working there in terms of connection. We also right now have a short list for the track and tunnel. And if you're interested in getting that short list, I think I can put the information in the chat, but it's kind of a lot. There's also, it's not just BART. I mean, VTA spends how many billions of dollars a year, Reginald? 2 billion on things other than BART, and both materials and construction and IT and engineering. There's all sorts of things. And there's a look ahead list. We just did a webinar yesterday that went over small business support from VTA. It is absolutely amazing. They are changing the paradigm on how they support small businesses. It took us a whole hour to talk about it, but in that we also let you know that you can download the upcoming contracts. If you don't know the information, you can't do anything about it. So upcoming contracts for the next year, kind of in general, when they're going to be coming out, all of those things. So that's another source of information. And then, it was interesting. I think 2/3 of the people said they had a business plan and some didn't, but that was also kind of low on the issue. It sounded to me, Robert, like business plan is one of the key foundational things that if you don't have that, everything else kind of falls apart.
It's almost as if, all of us go to the grocery store and you need a grocery list. So it's the same thing. If you don't have a grocery list, you usually buy more than you need it. And for having an annual business plan, if you don't have one, what happens is that you're going through the whole calendar year in a haphazard form. And so you can be very discombobulated. And that's going to cause perhaps confusion to the people you're working with. Your messaging or branding to your teaming partner or clients perhaps is not clear. Certainly it's going to have an adverse impact on your finances. So again, there are basic templates for a business plan you can get online. One of the things that I did, another story, true story, was that I went down to Stanford University, went to the engineering department and met with the professor, told him that I was trying to get my business up and running. And he gave me 2 Stanford grad students who were wanting to get the degree in engineering and business. They were getting a degree in business and engineering. And I had them help write the first kind of overall company business plan. So they got school credit for it. And I got, this great product that allowed me to then use and massage it for what my needs were. So again, it's just being creative, using the resources that are out there. And it's just a question of figuring that out.
Outstanding. I'm going to take it from here. We've got a minute or two left. Robert,
could you I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you put that last slide up so that people can get that contact information?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Robert. There was a couple of things we didn't get to on the Q&A. Our apologies. We'll see what we can do to get some answers back. There were some questions about contact information as well. We'll try to get that out to folks as well. So just in closing, I want to thank Robert Luster and all of you for participating today in this 3rd workshop. Next month's workshop is scheduled for July 8th, which is a Thursday. We're trying to do these on Thursdays at the beginning of the month. The topic for that presentation will be on business development by Sheila Ray Given, who's a principal with PGH Wong. Robert mentioned PGH Wong, had Rags Rich's story as well. Sheila's a phenomenal person, and we look forward to her presentation. Just a reminder as well that these workshops are being recorded and will be made available afterwards. The first 2 that have already happened, as well as this one, will be available through a link. And I know Robert's struggling to get that slide up, but we'll get that out.
I
And if-
also, Raul, wanted to mention that we're starting a new project management course. This is going to be a course that anybody taking it, and there's space limited, there's 20 of them. It's being led by Turner Construction Group. And that course is going to be the basis for the next group of proteges. So a great way to develop a relationship is to become a protege with a company, and this is an opportunity for you. It's going to be starting in September. There'll be more information coming out about it, but if you're interested, please email me.
All right, and with that, I'd like to say have a great weekend, and we'll talk to everybody hopefully next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you.